All right. So it's been a year. It's hard to believe. It's been a full year since I officially bought my Mooney. It's been a tough year for a lot of people. No secret there. But in our household, it's been pretty good. So we've been able to cope pretty well. I will say that the flying took a little bit of a hit this year. But that doesn't mean owning the airplane was a struggle. Owning the airplane was actually quite good. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page and kind of let everybody know what exactly I do have. If you haven't seen my videos, it's likely you have, but I'll talk through what the plane is. And then I'll talk a little bit about how I own it. I own it in a partnership, so we'll go into some details there. I know a lot of people are considering owning planes, even potentially in partnerships. I'll talk about some of the good that I found in having the plane, and of course, some of the struggles that have come from owning the plane. I'll talk about what I've found that I just didn't expect, things that surprised me, and of course, what 2021 might bring for me and for the airplane and for the family. We'll also take a few minutes and field any questions that come in, whether they're about ownership, flying in general aviation, what we're doing, how we're doing it, how you can get more involved. So I encourage anybody that has questions just to drop them in and we'll talk through them. I have to thank my wife first and foremost for letting this happen, letting the airplane ownership and the YouTube journey, even down to using her office space. Having the support of the family has been tremendous, huge. You couldn't do it without it. I couldn't do it without them, without their support. So my wife's always supported every venture I've kind of found myself in. I've taken on lots of different ventures, lots of different hobbies, and flying being one of my first hobbies, but now one of my most recent. So anyways, let's take a few minutes and just kind of talk about what I own, what the plane is, kind of how I own it. It's a 1963 Mooney M20C. When we were looking for airplanes, when I was looking for airplanes, I didn't know that a Mooney was what I was going to find, or what I was going to fall in love with. But now that I have one, I don't know that I could ever move away from a Mooney. There's, of course, lots of other airplanes with lots of other features and nice to haves, but there's something about the Mooney. I've flown in a lot. I started in 150s and moved into 152s, and had a 172 for some time with my family, my dad, my mom, when I was younger. And they're nice planes. I enjoyed them. And I really didn't get to try out a lot of different planes back then. But now that I've jumped into the Mooney, man, it would be hard to leave it. So nimble, so fast, a good flyer, plenty of cabin space, no matter what anybody else says. I think there's just as much as there is in a 172. It's just different space. Maybe a little less headroom, but some more leg room, and certainly just as much back seat room. So anyways, it's a 1963 Mooney M20C. It's got 180 horse Lycoming 0360. Pretty standard stuff. It is IFR certified or certifiable. It's not up to date. It's got a KLN 94 GPS, a couple VORs, nothing too fancy, really. 2 owners ago, hey, Matt, I'll talk about the useful load in a minute. A couple owners ago, they redid the panel. It's nothing special, right? There's no real high-end electronics. It does have an electronic tack, but they put a little bit of money into it. The plane's got about 800 hours on the engine and a little over 3,000 total time. And it's just a nice flyer. The paint is certainly getting kind of thin, which, hey, that's a bargain to me. Paint doesn't make it faster or not too much faster, and we got it cheap because of it. Matt asked what the useful load is. In a comment in an earlier video, I said something about how the Mooney would haul 1,000 pounds. That might have been a touch of an overstatement. I think the useful load's right about 950, the way it's equipped. But I mean, you could take off heavy. I don't recommend it. The plane would haul it. It's just, of course, outside of the rules. But I have a wife and two young kids, 4 and 7. And, we're just normal sized people. And we comfortably can take off with full fuel and go anywhere. No problem at all. Of course, I fly it out of Sparta, which is in Michigan, 8 Delta 4, and it's a big runway. I mean, it's not huge, but it's like 4,000 feet. So we've got lots of room for takeoff and landing. So that's the plane. Again, 1963 Mooney M20C, Johnson bar, retractable landing gear, manual hydraulic flaps, no motors in the gear or the flap systems, a lot less to fail, easy to annual, and a lot of fun to fly. I love that shot of the wheels retracting in like half a second. They just instant up, instant down, easy to fly, a fun, complex airplane. And it was actually my first complex airplane I've ever flown. I've ever been pilot in command in. It took a few hours. It probably took 6 or 7 hours for me to feel comfortable in being pilot in command, and about 10 hours for the insurance agency, the insurance company, to feel comfortable. So it's a ton of fun. It's a great plane to fly. So I'll talk a little bit about how I own the plane. I think that's important. A lot of people want to own airplanes. I wanted to own an airplane. I've wanted to own one for a long time. But it's not always financially feasible for people. And there's a lot of good options out there. If you can own it yourself, that's great. If you can own it in a partnership, I've found that to be fantastic. That's how I own my plane, in a partnership. There's also options like flying clubs or just regular rental. The partnership worked out for me because I got lucky, right? I found a partner who is like-minded, right? And has a lot of the same goals. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So anyways, I'll talk how the partnership works. I think that's important. It's what I'm familiar with. I came from renting, just from renting a Cessna 172, and moved into a partnership. In that partnership, we split the costs right down the middle. It's a 2-man deal, okay? Real straightforward. We created an LLC, right, to own the airplane. We both funded it with the same amount of money, and we both pay for everything out of that LLC. We each have, it has its own bank account, and we charge ourselves, charge our fuel with a fuel card, pay for maintenance expenses right out of that account. And so kind of how we have it structured, we have a fixed monthly overhead cost, right? It's all driven by a spreadsheet that I manage. Fixed monthly overhead costs. For us, we're real fortunate. With insurance and hangar, it's about $170 a person. So real inexpensive. And then we charge ourselves an hourly rate. And we've been dynamic in that hourly rate. So we haven't just stayed at a flat rate. If fuel prices go down, we may adjust it down a little bit. If fuel prices go up, we may adjust it up a little bit. It looks like we may have to do that here shortly. Fuel prices seem to be on the rise a little bit. But it's dynamic, and built into that hourly rate is the cost of fuel and oil, consumables, and of course a little bit for some reserves. So we've been real fortunate. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but we've been real fortunate to not have to dig into those reserves. So like I mentioned before, I got really lucky in finding a partner, right? I was sitting around the FBO table one day, me and I think my flight instructor at the time, or one I had used in the past, were chatting, and this third guy was just kind of sitting at the table. I didn't know who he was. And the more we talked, the more I realized that he's somebody who is also interested in owning a plane and buying a plane, and that we had a lot of common goals and interests, and were like-minded. And we just kind of left that table saying, hey, here's my number and here's yours. Let's just talk, right? Maybe something will work out. And we just shot text back and forth over and over again, started throwing airplanes at each other, talking about what it might look like to own a plane. Of course, getting really excited. All of us got excited. Every time we'd find a plane that might work out, we got excited. And we just realized that it had to happen. So the first plane we tried to buy was actually a Comanche 180. I like Comanches. I think they're cool airplanes. There's not a whole lot of 180s flying around. Most of them are big sixes, 250s or up. And we found one for sale in Indianapolis that we really liked. But I was a little slow to react and maybe a little harsh on negotiation, and it just didn't work out. And I think that's all for the better because we landed in a plane we really like. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about things that I think are important in a partner. Again, I say I got lucky, and I think I did. But if you were somebody who was trying to be in a partnership, these are the things that if I were you, I would try and display. And if you were looking for somebody, I would try and find. So, of course, you want to find somebody who is available, right? Somebody who you can talk to often, who you can shoot ideas and thoughts and messages around or to, and you guys can come to agreements easily, right? Somebody who's fair, somebody who realizes you might need the plane for a week and they might need the plane for a week and isn't always wanting to be flying. Somebody who understands that there's more than one person flying the plane. It's really nice to have somebody who has the same mission or a similar vision. That's going to make sure that you guys get in a similar airplane. That's one Wes and I, my partner's name's Wes, we talked about a lot initially. He was interested in a 182 or something more backcountry driven. What can I get to land into grass strips and do some fun flying that way? And I was interested in a traveling airplane, something I could go cross country in with some speed. And we just kind of had to walk through that. We weren't going to find a plane that met both of those needs, especially not in our price range. And the more we talked about the Mooney, maybe I persuaded him, or maybe he realized that he still could do the flying he wanted into grass strips. And he could also cross country in the airplane. So finding that we really had the same mission, we just didn't know it right away, was a huge thing. And then, of course, you have to have somebody that has the same standard of care, right? There's nothing worse than showing up to the airport and realizing the guy before you didn't wipe the bird poop off, or didn't care to clean the window after a flight, or left the cabin a mess, right? So somebody who is up to the same standard of care of the airplane, of course, it goes much deeper than that. They have to have the same standards of care as far as maintenance. They have to be willing to invest money into it to pay for things that aren't fixed. So you have to find somebody that's on that same wavelength. And then finally, this is a tough one because I don't think everybody will tell you. You have to find somebody who's financially stable, somebody who can actually afford one of these things. We talk about airplanes being expensive, or like owning a boat or whatever. That's true. They can also be way more expensive. When big expenses come, big checks have to get written. And if you can't work together to make that happen, or if one person can't afford it, you'll find yourself in trouble. So again, I felt really, really glad to find the partner that I did. One funny thing, I think this is funny. We've owned the plane for a year together. I've never flown with Wes. We've never actually had an opportunity to fly together. He works out of town a lot. I'm extremely busy with my work and family. We just haven't had it happen. So that's kind of crazy. So I just want to circle back to a couple comments real quick, and then I'll jump into what I've found to be some of the best things about owning an airplane. So Noah asked if we had a planned number of annual flight hours when I bought the plane. I would like to say yes. The number was quite high, and I didn't reach it. So I was hoping to fly about 100 hours, and I only flew in the 30s, mid-30s, and that's about where Wes ended up too, in the mid-30s. So we put, I don't remember, it's in my cost of flying video. We put something like 65 or 70 hours on the airplane last year, and we do anticipate that number to be much higher in 2021. Yeah, that's exactly what you said. The flight hours seemed low in my cost of ownership video. You know, you can blame it on anything. I don't like to make excuses. I wanted to fly more. Um, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on, maybe why I didn't get to fly as much. But there's no excuse. Got to get back up in the air a little bit more. So thanks, Bob. Thanks for being here. He said, love the channel. Nothing beats the Mooney. I tell you what, I don't know that I could have done this without all the support of you guys. It's fantastic. There's definitely a huge Mooney community, Mooney pilots, Mooney enthusiasts, even if they don't have one. It's been fantastic. So I want to get into the good. Let's talk about what some of the best things that I've found in having the Mooney, right? Some of the good for us is pure luck. We've been incredibly lucky so far from a mechanical standpoint. And I know a lot of people wouldn't say that because that's when bad things happen. But we've been fortunate. Just a few odds and ends here and there to get fixed. Nothing major. We have plans for if something were to break. You know, we have magnetos that are getting towards the end of their life. We'll probably go to the SureFly mag, the electronic mag on one of them. And we're just starting to plan for those things. But so far, we've been very lucky mechanically. Second, the Mooney has proven to be incredibly economical. In the few hours we've logged, you know, 65, 70 hours, whatever it was between us, we've had the opportunity to take a couple longer cross countries, and the plane has lived up to its hype. I easily get 8 or 9 gallons an hour at altitude at 8 or 9,000 feet, and we get at least 130, 140 knots. I tend to fly it pretty conservatively, 23 squared, 23 inches, 2,300. I know a lot of people fly it a little bit harder than that, 2,500 RPM, 2,400 RPM. Of course, I don't get 23 inches up at altitude, but it's been great. The plane has been economical, which is a big reason we bought it. I mentioned this before, but I've been able to connect with a huge community through Facebook groups, through this YouTube channel, and a lot of other ways at the airport, the FBO, other airports. Just the community in general has been so awesome. So we're all in this together when we own a plane. One guy in particular at the airport, Chris, in my video about the sling, he's the owner of that sling. He's had 4 Moonies and just sold his last one, and essentially is giving us all his spare parts, everything he had left over. He's like, we're in this together. You've got a Mooney. You're at the same field as I am. Hold on to them. And if you hear somebody that needs one, let them have it, right? It's just a fantastic community. This is one that I think is going to change. So this is why I'm mentioning it. Fuel prices have been so good this year. In the few hours that we've flown, we've had fantastic fuel prices, and it's really allowed for economical flying. Now, my airport just had a little bit of a price increase. He held off as long as he could, and I think more and more airports will. Fuel is just going to get more expensive. So hang on to the ride. Hang on for that one to rise. And the last thing I have on the good list, there's many more, but you know, I want to keep this a little concise. The family has enjoyed being part of the adventure. That's been a huge thing for me. I don't talk about it a lot. This is really focused on aviation. But before this hobby, my summer hobby was auto racing, circle track, asphalt circle track racing. And my children are getting to the age where they realize when I'm not there. And they realize when I'm home, but not present. You know, in racing, you're either at the track or you're in the garage working on the car. They say races are won in the garage, not at the track. So a lot of time and energy went into that race car, and it had to change. It was time. So we made a really good change back towards flying. I've been flying for a long time, since I was very young, and having them as part of the journey has been incredible. Now, with that said, it does add some limitations. You know, bathroom breaks or just pure stamina in the kids isn't quite what it is for an adult. So, you know, our trips have to be an hour and a half to 2 hours at the most. If they're a little shorter than that, that's a little better for them. we have to find ways to keep them entertained. Unfortunately, although looking outside is wonderful, it gets old to the little ones pretty quick. So iPads and noise canceling Bluetooth headphones are a little bit of a godsend, but we really try and focus on encouraging them to get their eyes outside as well when we're flying. And we've also found that hot days, they're really no good for the little ones. They tend to get hot easy. Hot leads to sickness. We haven't had any air sickness yet, but you could see we were close a couple times. Of course, we've fought, a couple ears that won't pop and things like that. So it adds a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of excitement, but it's I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think these are memories that they will never forget and will stick with them for a long time. Hey, Jeff, good to see you here. Shouldn't you be at work still? I won't tell anybody. All right, so let's talk about some of the bad that having the plane has brought. We've already talked about at least one of these, probably most of them. First, I just haven't been able to fly as much as I'd like. Every hour is a break, right, Jeff? Yeah. Anyways, I haven't been able to fly as much as I'd like. 30 hours or between 30 and 40 is simply not enough. Have to do more. The cost, it just does not justify itself unless you're going to fly some more. So we hope to make that happen more. Now, here's all the excuses as to why I didn't fly enough. So business slowed down quite a bit. Business travel. The business I'm in, which is hand tools, actually had a great year, and our company had a fantastic year. But business travel slowed down. I had trips to Louisville that I wanted to make, and even potentially trips out west to Las Vegas, which would have been a big hike, but I had considered making it in the Mooney. Those trips just didn't happen. And I was hoping to have a couple more trips to Missouri, where I have a pretty big customer, a great customer. But things just shut down, so we didn't get to go. And of course, pleasure travel slowed down quite a bit as well, especially in the first half of the year, or I guess most of the year for us. We had plans of doing a lot more traveling as a family, and places just weren't open. So we'll get, hope to get back more on that in 2021. Another thing that just kind of stinks, it's just part of the world right now, is insurance prices continue to rise, and it's forcing us to make some hard decisions. So there's a lot of talk out there about insurance costs and what's right for us. Very candidly, my partner and I have had to have conversations of whether or not we keep the plane fully insured, or if it makes more sense for us to go to maybe a liability-only policy that's substantially less money. Or there's also options to meet in the middle and do some liability and insure the plane when it's on the ground, so when it's in storage, where unfortunately it's been for most of the time. So it's making us make hard decisions, and I hope that there's some action that happens to start lowering some of those costs. Then, of course, we've had a few starting problems. We've been able to overcome them quite well, but early on in the plane ownership, so we bought it in February. It's been about a year, and we had a little bit of a struggle to get it to start. Mostly the battery would not live up to the amount of cranking we'd have to do as we figured out the procedure. So we got a lot better at that. We installed a trickle charger. We always put that on between flights. That really helped a ton. Through the summer, starting was no problem. When the engine's warm, it starts right up nice. But come winter again, it's been a little bit of a challenge. So we've had to work hard to get that procedure dialed back in. And I think we've got a little bit of an issue that we have to go hunt down, a little bit of a mechanical issue. So we'll start digging into that here shortly with a mechanic. So that's been a little bit of a bummer. When the plane's hard to start, or in some cases you kill the battery trying to start it, that really can be a bummer. Now, fortunately, we haven't done that in a while. The chargers worked well. And then finally, as far as the bad's concerned, man, winter is a bummer. So I live in Michigan. Not only do I live in Michigan, I live in Western Michigan, which gets weather influenced by the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan, like it's nobody's business. So, you go 50 miles or 100 miles east in Michigan, you get a lot more blue sky days or a lot less cloudy days. But in West Michigan, we sure seem to have clouds all the time or snow all the time. So it's a bummer. It feels like it drags on more when you have that thing that you want to go do that's reliant on good weather, or at least marginally good weather. So, hey, Bob. Yeah, you said you're in Toronto and the weather there sucks this winter. And it's probably pretty common. I think you guys get some lake effect too, just off a different lake. It's just been a rough one and cold, and it takes some of the ambition out of you. So got to overcome that, get out and in those good days, even if it's a lot of work or cold or harder work than you want, and you just got to do it. So that's something I have to continue to force myself. Just get out there and do it. All right. So now I want to talk about some things that I just didn't expect being an airplane owner. Or I didn't expect, my expectations were high. That's for sure. I expected to be flying everywhere and doing everything. So the first thing I didn't expect is I didn't expect to only take 2 long cross countries. I expected to be traveling all over the place. The first cross country that I took was pretty early in my ownership. And honestly, it jazzed me up. It made me think I'm going to be doing this every week or every month. I got to go. Like, this is awesome. So that trip was for work. It wasn't necessary. So I paid for it. I could have driven with a colleague that was going down, but I got an airplane. So let's do this thing, right? So it was to Moberly, Missouri, which is in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. And it proved just how economical general aviation can be. Moberly is like 3 hours west of St. Louis and 3 hours east of Kansas City. It's right in the middle of Missouri. It's a 10-hour drive from where I am, and at least a 6 or 7 hour flight because nothing goes direct. Nothing goes direct to Moberly. So you have to fly into St. Louis or Kansas City, or you have to fly into Columbia, which is an ungodly expensive airplane ticket because nobody goes there. So it was a great way for me to prove that flying was the right, general aviation was the right call. So from Sparta, I went around the bottom of Lake Michigan and flew to Moberly and made it there in just about 3 hours on the dot, and got the car at the FBO, got the courtesy car, and kept that for a day until my colleague showed up when I picked up a rental car that I would then drive for a week. And I beat him down. It took him 10 hours to drive it. Took me 3 hours to fly it. And it was a ton of fun. Had some weather to deal with. As a matter of fact, I made a video about it, but we skirted around some weather. I skirted around some weather, especially on my way home. I learned a lot about the airplane. Bob, I think I cruised down, man, got to turn the memory banks up. I think I cruised down at 8.5 or 10.5, and I came back at 9.5. And it was so comfortable, smooth air. I flew for 30 or 45 minute periods with not even touching the yoke, just flying with my feet, just small corrections on the rudder pedals. The worst part about that was there's just no bathroom up there, right? So after I landed 3 hours later and drank too much water in the plane, I pretty much waddled to the FBO. But it was worth it. It was a ton of fun. And it really encouraged me. So after that flight, I thought, I'm going to do this all the time. And it just didn't happen. Just didn't come together. So I definitely want to make that happen more. I'd love to make a trip. My parents live in Florida in the winter. I'd like to make a trip down there. And even taking a weekend trip with the wife to Tennessee or somewhere warmer. It's just something we'd love to do. I'm just going to stop real quick and answer Fabrication Hints question, because it's a good one, and one that I'm I will not. How could I say this? I will not go against the law because I want my job and my airplane. But he asked, how did you expense the trip to the company, hourly rate or fuel? I'm not a commercial pilot, so I just ate this one. Now, technically, because it was only me and it was only the travel, I didn't bring any of my tools. I didn't bring anything with me. Technically, I believe I could have had them reimburse me. But because I had somebody else going down, flying or driving a car that we had rented, and I could have tagged along with him, I knew it was like in excess, right? I didn't need to fly. So I didn't charge them. I just ate the cost. Moberly has a community hangar where you can rent. I think I rented it for like just one spot in it for like $60 or $70 for the week. So it was in a building. It wasn't sitting out on the ramp, and it was just a piece of cake. So I just took that cost on. It was worth it to me. All right. So a couple other things that I didn't expect. I didn't expect that I would only be able to fly so few days in the winter. I think the reason I didn't expect that is because I did a lot of my flight training in the winter back when I was 16, 15. Well, I started when I was 15 and got my license when I was 17. So I was doing quite a bit of flying that year, and a lot of it was in the winter. But those planes were being run a lot. There was a lot of people taking training, so they were always warm. We did a lot of pattern work, a lot of low altitude work, not a lot of travel. So you could fly more. The mission was just different. But I think I had it in my head that, there would at least be 2 or 3 days a week that I could fly. Well, the thing I realize now, maybe the biggest difference is when I was taking those lessons, I was in high school. So I'd get out of high school at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, whatever time it was, and I still had a couple hours of daylight to burn. I could go fly. Now I work pretty long hours. So if I don't get out of work until 5 o'clock, well, now it's dark, and I hadn't had dinner yet and have a family to go home to. It just makes it a challenge. So now you're just trying to find weekend hours to fly. So anyway, that's a bunch of excuses, but it's true. That's why I think one of the most profound things you can do is to spring and fall months, the days still are pretty short. So being able to fly at night is a huge advantage, or being comfortable. So I'm not night current right now for no good reason why. I hope to soon get that currency back. And then the last thing that I didn't expect to take a 3-month break from flying. I own an airplane, for crying out loud. What excuses could possibly exist to take 3 months off between flights? And there's a few things that led up to that, to me taking that time off. And I think we all have it, right? Again, I did make a quick video about the things that stop you from flying. A lot of those stopped me. So one, time, right? Days are short. I work long hours, have a lot of other commitments. I just didn't have the time. 2, money, although it's our plane, my plane, and my partner's, and it's cheaper than renting, there's incremental cost to flying it. So if it's not in our family's budget for the month, if something comes up, I'm not going to fly it. I'll pay my $165 or my overhead cost for the month, and I'll slow down the flying. So sometimes that's just what you have to do. And then third, I lost a little bit of confidence in myself. I didn't have a lot of confidence when I started flying the Mooney. I gained it quite quickly and felt real comfortable. And then I started making a few mistakes. And you make a couple mistakes, you lose some of that confidence, and you start thinking, maybe I don't have what it takes. At least that's how my brain works from time to time. Maybe that's safer than being overconfident, but it is a little nerve-wracking, or it can be a little upsetting when you lose that confidence. So I forced myself back in, which of course I wanted to fly, but I got back in, did some landings in the pattern, tried to sharpen the skills up again, and away we go. Now I'm flying more. So again, I did not expect to take 3 months off, and I hope it doesn't happen again. But push come to shove, it is still a hobby, right? It is still not the priority. The biggest priority, of course, is my family. So anyways, all that to say, it can happen, but I didn't expect it to happen. All right, so I'm just going to read a comment here from Fab Hints, and my comment from my beautiful wife, who loves my background as I'm in her office. He says he knows a guy in a club that has an agreement with his company that they reimburse for the hourly rental plus fuel, not compensation. Yeah, I know a lot of people can try and make it happen. If you have questions about that, again, I will not claim to be an expert. I do have a contact. I used to fly with her. I'm happy to pass that along. She's a CPA who has a firm who works solely with people who fly for business. I think mostly with people who own a business and an airplane and use the airplane for business. But I think she can help a lot of people if you have questions about legalities there. I don't claim to know it perfectly. I've never tried to reimburse myself. Jeremy, thanks for the comment. I appreciate you being here. Tell everybody about it. If that's, I am trying to grow this thing, and it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. The support is tremendous, and I hope to do a ton with it. So, all right. So, I guess the last topic I have to talk about this, so then we'll wrap it up, is what 2021 will bring. So we're a couple months in to 2021. And this is what I expect. I expect a ton more travel. I expect to go to Oshkosh. I expect to go to Mackinac Island, which is just northeast of us. It's an hour flight, and airplanes are the only the only engine-driven vehicles on the island. The only other thing that goes to the island is boats or snowmobiles in the winter if it ices up enough. So I plan to go to Mackinac Island, and I'd really like to make a trip to Put-in-Bay. I think it's technically Ohio, but I hear a lot of great things, although I'm not an Ohio fan. I'm a Michigan fan. Anyways, I hear a lot of good things about Put-in-Bay, so I would like to make that happen. I also think that I'll find some time to travel for work a bit more. There's some opportunities coming up within our business where I think day trips to visit suppliers or go vet equipment or just do a lot more things is possible. And I hope to do that. And one thing that I've really disappointed myself in, and I really intend to do more of or to get back on, is my IFR training. So quite honestly, I did one lesson earlier this year that I didn't video, and I should have. It was hot. It was a nasty day, and I got in bad shape. I was not feeling well. I was not confident in the airplane yet, which was unfortunate. And I was making a lot of mistakes, and I was really hard on myself, and it just discouraged me. And of course, you know, it's a time commitment. I want to be able to put a couple solid months towards training and then get my ticket. But I just didn't do it. So you will definitely come along for the journey when you do. I now will definitely have the camera rolling when I get back to IFR training. I just got to work myself back up to it and just get it done. And then finally, the thing that I expect to happen in 2021 are some upgrades to the airplane. So we've definitely come to realize we need to make a few little changes. First and foremost is a safety upgrade, and that is front seat shoulder harnesses. Unfortunately, nothing's cheap, right? So we're forced to kind of work hard to prioritize where our money is going to be spent. And we think shoulder harnesses are a great investment in the airplane and a great investment in our faces, right? So I really hope to never have to use them, but we want them there. I mean, never have to have them be actually stop my face from hitting the panel, but we want them there. I would really hope that this year we can also prioritize getting a spin-on oil filter put on. It sounds crazy, but our Mooney still has the old screen filter which limits the life of the oil, forces you to change the oil a little bit more often, and it's a little bit more challenging to change the oil. And probably the most important thing, it's just not as effective. So putting a spin-on oil filter on will be a nice little thing. Those 2 upgrades, shoulder harnesses and oil filter, we really hope to do during annual, which is in May. And then, of course, there's some like to have, some want to have things. Whether they happen or not, it's hard to say. Probably the most important one to me is an engine monitor. So right now we just have the old 6-pack of fuel quantity, CHT, oil pressure, oil temperature. And man, one, you can't trust the fuel gauges. The cylinder head temperature changes, based on how you're looking at it. It's hard to really know, and it's just not accurate, and it's only one cylinder. We just want to monitor the performance of the plane better. We want to take care of it better. We want to make sure that we're running it as efficiently as we can, and that would certainly help. So hopefully we can prioritize that, but it does get quite a bit more expensive. So we'll see what happens, but I think there's a decently good chance of doing it. So that's what I think happens in 2021. A lot more travel for work and for fun, some instrument training, and culminating in getting my instrument ticket, and then some upgrades to the airplane to make it safer and to make us better aviators, to make us run the plane more efficiently. So I'm going to kind of end this thing by just talking about the last couple comments that you guys have left. Thank you for being here. I know a lot of you have been here for the whole thing. I really appreciate it. And then we'll find some time to make some more videos and get them up on the channel. So Bob mentioned in 2021, he'd like to take his wife down in the Mooney to visit their daughter in Atlanta. But because due to COVID, she hasn't seen her in over a year. That's really unfortunate, Bob. I'm sorry to hear that. And that sounds like a great trip. I've got some family on the East Coast in the Carolinas, and I would love to get over there. It's really only a few-hour flight. So I hope to get over that way as well. And then Fabrication Hints asked or said, will you have to do a few hours with a flight instructor to get your currency back? I'm assuming you're talking about night currency. I think that's, I would like to go up. I think you just have to do 3 takeoffs and landings with them. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. But I would just want to go do maybe a 50-mile cross country, which is pretty short in the Mooney, and some landings at our home airport and some landings at an unfamiliar airport, and just have them there for a little bit of confidence boost. Quite honestly, if there's anything, I may be overconfident in the night stuff. I think night flying is actually quite a bit easier from a navigation standpoint, at least from a dead reckoning navigation standpoint. I still have my GPS and all the nav aids, so I don't have a lot of concern about that. And it's just making sure you're safe when you do something unfamiliar. So, and then you mentioned that you concern about confidence is something that you've also thought of long term. It can be tough. I'm a confident leader at work and confident in a lot of the things that I do. But there's a lot at risk when you're flying. So I think there's a healthy level of hesitancy, and you have to challenge yourself. You have to challenge yourself if you really understand the concepts or understand what you're doing well enough. So the best thing you can do to overcome any confidence issues is just get out there and fly, associate with other pilots, go fly with other pilots. I don't mean this about any pilot I've flown with recently, but I do mean it about pilots I've flown with in the past. You realize how good of a pilot you might be when you fly with other people, because it can be a little scary. We hold ourselves to high standards. Many of us hold ourselves to incredibly high standards, and I don't know that everybody else does. I've been in a couple planes with people that after I landed, I thanked them and told myself I would never fly with them again. So be confident. If you're not confident, go out, get an instructor, listen to them, get an instructor who can give you candid feedback. I like to start that with my instructors. whenever I have one, I'll say, listen, I'm not here for you to tell me I'm the greatest pilot in the world or to sugarcoat anything. I need you to tell me the truth. And if you can tell me the truth, that will make me safer, and I'll keep coming back to you. So, again, I'm having a great time with the Mooney. I appreciate you guys sticking through and listening to how 2020 was and what I expect in 2021. As always, make sure you go out and find your time to fly. I'm going to find more this year, and I want you to fly yours as well. Thanks again, Bob. I appreciate you being here. We will talk to you all soon.